Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Dill. It's officially game week. The game that I think we're both most excited for, week one, Miami heading on the road to play the Florida Gators. We previewed this game about a month ago before fall camp. A lot can change in kind of how we look at this game. Really excited to get into this one. Now, before we get into it, most of y'all who've been rocking with the boys kind of know the deal. Let it fly in the comment section. The comments when we did this first preview, absolutely amazing. It was a war zone down there, but it was phenomenal. I mean, that's what college football is about. So would love to hear from you guys in the comment section, whether you're disagreeing with the boys, whether you're mixing it up with the opposing fan base. That's what it's about. Would love to hear from you guys. And again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. The amount of support all off season long it's been amazing. We appreciate you guys. And Dill, without further ado, let's start with just some intriguing matchups in this game. Then we'll get to the game prediction. I think we got to start with this Miami Hurricanes offense going up against the Florida Gators defense that it struggled last year, but going into year two with Austin Armstrong, having a lot of young talent on the defensive side of the football that's coming back, we expect this unit to take a massive step in the right direction. But I think all eyes are on this Miami Hurricanes rushing attack against the Florida Gators defense that gave up 5.1 yards per carry last year. That was 117th in the country. You look at this Miami Hurricanes team, Mario Cristobal has built this program to control the line of scrimmage. The number one thing we're looking at is this Miami Hurricanes rushing attack going up against the Gators defense that, again, we think gets better, but they gotta show it week one against the Hurricanes.
And can Miami commit to doing it? I felt like last year you saw games like North Carolina or even that Georgia Tech game where they start off, they're running the ball pretty well early, and then when it maybe they don't have a successful driver to it, felt like they'd flip the whole script and all right, we're just going to air it out. Miami needs to, I think, be able to stick to the running game, be able to make that their identity, because at the end of the day, I look at how they're structured on offense. I mean, you bring in a Damian Martinez, you have a Mark Fletcher, you have a great offensive line. That's a team that's almost built to wear teams out. And frankly, I think they need to make Florida prove that they can just line up play down after down, play after play, series after series, and do it all game. Because there were times like you said, that Florida, you could break them down a little bit. And I think Billy's trying to fix that, almost like a culture shift a little bit in this Florida Gator room. But I think you got to go make them prove that they've done it if they have.
I think you said it right with the identity. You go back to Miami here, this Miami offense last year. I don't know if they had an identity on offense. You look at how this program is built specifically on offense. Like you said, it is to control the line of scrimmage. Can Mario Cristobal stick to that identity in this week one matchup against the Florida Gators? That's probably the biggest question we have. And I think kind of digging into that matchup a little bit more, you suddenly maybe have some question marks about the depth on the inside of the line for this Florida Gators defense. With a guy like Jamari Lyons going down, you might have to be rotating in some true freshmen week one against this Miami Hurricanes team. If you are Miami and you can just establish the run, control the time of possession, make this Florida defensive line stay on the football field for a large chunk of this football game, I think that's how you get to this Florida Gators defense. Now, we're talking about the rushing attack. Miami also brought in one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Cam Ward. I think storyline that I'm looking at is if Florida does want to put 7-8 guys in the box to deal with this Miami Hurricanes rushing attack, something that Miami struggled to do last year was make teams pay vertically down the field. Can Cam Ward and this Miami Hurricanes defense do that week one? That's probably the second question mark you're looking at.
And that's on a more macro level. If Cam Ward comes in and plays really well, I think Miami might be being slept on a little bit, frankly. If Cam Ward goes out and balls, I mean, there really isn't a big hole in this team. I think they'd be so hard to stop if he's really good. And then you let those wide receivers they have, because they have a lot of, I think their wide receivers get under the wrap, frankly. I think, again, their passing attack had its ups and downs for sure last year, but I look at a guy like Jacoby George. I think he is really, really good. And then obviously your guy, Restrepo, he's probably going to have some favorable matchups against some young guys, obviously both in that nickel room and in that safety room. Florida's kind of on the young side. So can they kind of work that passing attack through Restrepo and then try to hit some things deep if teams need to kind of
– You talk about trying to settle Cam Ward in. Xavier Restrepo on a guy like Sharif Denson in that nickel slot. I think that's a really big matchup for Miami to work too early. I think Sharif Denson's a great football player, but Xavier Restrepo, Cam Ward, that can be a really dynamic quarterback wide receiver combo. If they can kind of pick on that matchup, That'd be a really big key too. Now, looking at Florida's defense and kind of the storyline that I'm looking at to try to stop this Miami Hurricanes offense, year 2 under Austin Armstrong. Look, Austin Armstrong has a very complicated defense, and he had a complicated defense with a very young defense last year. It wasn't a very good combination. Now, you get a lot of these guys returning heading into 2024. My big question mark is, can Austin Armstrong put together a complicated defense that can get to the new faces that Miami has? I think Florida's best chance in this matchup is, hey, Miami has a ton of talent. Like on paper, this is a very talented football team, but it's a lot of new faces, right? A new center who's a veteran, a new quarterback who's a veteran. There's a lot of new faces. Can Austin Armstrong maybe get to some of that communication and the complexity of his defense, maybe give Miami some problems, especially as they try to get their feet wet early with all these new faces on offense?
And especially when you got to go play in the swamp. I mean, that place is going to be rocking. Like, I think that's a really good point, is they didn't turn the ball over at all last year. What did you tell me? They had 3 interceptions.
3 interceptions all of last year for Florida's defense.
Preposterously low. You obviously look at Armstrong, what he did in his previous stops. What is he, 17 the year before he got?
Last season at Southern Miss, he had 17 picks. And
they have to be able to take the football away. Again, Cam Ward, I think, is really good, but there are some tendencies in his game that you can get after. He does hold the ball a fair amount, and things can get a little haywire when you do that. If they can create some chaos, be a little bit disruptive. But frankly, I think a lot of it's going to be, can that defensive line, can those younger guys step up and get after the pass rush? I mean, I'm looking at guys like Cameron James or TJ Searcy or Kelby Collins, who, again, they have so much talent, but frankly, we were talking about that last year with some of the young guys on Florida, and then their defensive line just didn't play particularly great football. I think we could make this like more complicated, and I'd like to see them be a little bit more in sync in the back end and be able to take the ball away and create some havoc. But at the end of the day, they just need to prove to us, I think, Florida, that their defensive coaching staff's changes they've made on that front 7 unit are going to pay off, and they're just going to play at a higher level. That's both the linebackers and the defensive line.
The biggest storyline for Florida, not only in this matchup, but quite frankly, in all of 2024, is the player development. You had so much young talent that didn't really seem to get developed over the first couple of years of Billy Napier. Billy Napier noticed it, made complete overhaul of the coaching staff on the defensive side of the football. You're bringing a guy like Chapman from Tulane, who's done a phenomenal job in the player development standpoint. Can he get these guys like Kelby Collins and TJ Searcy and Cam James kind of rolling going into year 2?
If they simply don't play great in that front 7 unit, which, like, again, I think we look, there's a fair amount of talent. I think the linebacker room's like incredibly talented.
So talented.
But Shamar James needs to play great football more consistently than he did last year, where you saw some moments like that Tennessee game where he looks really good. And then you go to like the game against Kentucky and you're like, holy moly, this is like 2 different units. They need that consistency. And if they don't have it, if that unit's not like kind of ready to rock and roll and ready to play a physical downhill game, I think Miami can get after them a little bit.
Now, flipping sides here, Florida's offense, Miami's defense. There's one key matchup, I think. There's a couple key matchups, but one biggest one, and that is this Hurricanes pass rush that we think is going to be one of the best units in the country going up against Florida Gators offensive line that struggled mightily in pass protection last year. You look at Florida, we think the offensive line is going to be better from a pass protection standpoint, but that is, by far the biggest storyline here. Now, I think what Florida might be able to do on offense to give Miami some problems is, hey, you look at, if you are an offense, where are you going to try to attack Miami's defense? It's probably in the secondary, where they got a lot of turnover, a lot of young faces, a lot of new faces in the transfer portal. The biggest matchup I'm looking at, we've kind of talked about this the last couple of weeks. Can Florida get the football out quick? So you're mitigating and kind of taking away that Hurricanes pass rush, and get your playmakers the football in space and let them operate after the catch. I think the biggest story and biggest question mark we have for Miami is they got a lot of young guys in the secondary. You have guys like Chimere Dike, but Elijah Badger and Eugene Wilson, 2 guys that are premier talents with the football in their hands. Can you get the football out quick and make this Miami Hurricanes back end come up and tackle in space? That's probably something that you're looking for in this matchup.
Yeah, I think the people who almost make this game solely about what Miami's defensive line can possibly do to a Florida offensive line that, again, I think certainly everyone has a fair amount of questions about. They didn't play very good last year. They bring in a couple new transfer tackles, just some younger guys you hope develop into their roles. But they do have guys that you kind of said, if they just get the ball out quickly. And Graham Mertz, I thought, really started to dial that in towards the end of the year last year, where he wasn't holding the ball a whole lot. And he didn't even have that. I mean, when Eugene Wilson started to make it happen, I think that's when you started to see Graham Mertz really start to make it happen. So again, when you have those type of playmakers and you don't need to hold the ball forever and have a like well-developed downfield passing game necessarily, I think that does a lot to mitigate that pass rush. And then, like what you said, if they can just pop a couple big plays, that I think they got two guys who can do that. But
yeah, and I think for the big key for Miami is, can you dominate this football game with the light box? Like, you have question marks about your secondary. Let's keep two safeties high. Let's see if we can dominate with our front four, and then try to mitigate what Florida can do in space on the perimeter. That's probably the big thing you're looking for if you're Lance Guidry and this Miami Hurricanes defensive staff. They're getting to the pick here. 2.5-point favorites for the Miami Hurricanes heading on the road to play the Swamp week 1. Who are you rocking with here?
I love Miami. I think when you build a team the way Miami's built it, where they are elite on both sides of the lines of scrimmage, that to me is kind of the answer. And I get why people are doubt Miami. They do have to prove that they can win
100%
in big football games, because under Mario Cristobal, they really just haven't. But I think they've built this team the right way. I think Cam Ward's a big upgrade. I think he won't turn I like to think he won't turn the ball over like Tyler Van Dyke did in bad moments. But I just think you look at the physicality of this team, and with the questions I think we all have about Florida, and it's, again, Florida could certainly surprise you on the upside, because I don't look like they're not talented enough to do it. I think Miami, the way he's got that program rolling on both sides of the ball, on the lines of scrimmage, I really like.
You made a really good point. Like, this Florida team is talented. I don't think people give enough credit for like the young talent that's on this roster for Florida. Has it come together under Billy Napier yet? No. But it is a team that is talented enough to challenge teams like Miami, especially at home week 1. I'm going to go Miami too, and I think it just comes down to the matchups. You look at this Miami Hurricanes rushing attack, what we think is going to be really good against the Florida front seven that has struggled to stop the run. And then you look on the flip side and say, this Miami Hurricanes pass rush, I think, is going to be elite against the Florida Gators offensive line that it has to prove that they've gotten better in pass protection. And some of the question marks you might have with, okay, you got a bunch of new faces going on the road week 1. A lot of these new faces are extremely experienced, right? I mentioned the center quarterback new faces. Zach Carpenter has played a ton of football coming from Indiana. Cam Ward's obviously played a ton of football at the Power 5 level at Washington State. And so I look at, okay, do you have question marks about all this new faces going on the road week 1? Yes, but they get mitigated because of all the experience I think Miami has on both sides of the football. So I'm going to go Miami 2 to cover the 2.5 points. This is going to be a fun game. Florida fans, light us up in the comment section. This is what it's about. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Would love to hear from you all in the comment section. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, this will be a game that we're immediately reacting to after this game. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.